I have with me today Joshua Waller, the CEO of HaYovel, a popular and large Christian Zionist organization operating in the United States and in Israel. And I'm Maayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV News, and I welcome you back to the ILTV News Podcast. And welcome to you.
Thank you, Maayan. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you, Josh. Now, I want to start by talking about what happened last week. The Israel summit was supposed to be taking place actually from June 9th to 11th, if I remember correctly. That would be, as this is going to publish in the weekend, this is something that would have just concluded when the podcast will come out. But there is no Israel summit. There's a virtual one, but there's no physical Israel summit. It was canceled. First you moved venues, then you canceled. Just in short, what happened? Sure.
Well, I'm actually, as we're sitting in here in Tel Aviv together, I was also supposed to be in Dallas right now for this event. Everything was canceled off, so I stopped. And boy, we've been doing interviews and going crazy, really awakening the public to what just happened to us. The reality is that there's an underground movement that obviously with, I would say with even BLM and all these riots that came on, and they were very connected to the anti-Israel movement as well. And that's been everyone understands that. That swell that's happened across America, I think the big kicker is that it's in Texas. I wasn't aware of that until just now.
You thought there was no anti-Palestinian, or pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist entity in all of Texas?
The big enough to threaten a pro-Israel event in Texas. Now, that's pretty wild to me. So the reality is that we were, I want to make it very clear. We weren't, as an organization, shut down. We would never shut down. I don't care what happens. I don't care what kind of death threat, bomb threats.
That's not really what I understand, Josh.
And that's from, Josh, but I'm saying the venues is who got scared and said, whoa, we're used to this. Listen, I've lived here in Israel for 20 years. We know what jihad looks like. We know what this terrorist groups, and their tactic is fear. Yeah. Texas has not yet understood what this is. And I believe that we're waking that up right now, and I think Texas is going to figure it out. But the fact is our event was closed down because venues were frightened by whoa, what is this coming from? What is this massive amount of? At this point, I don't know the full spectrum of what was targeted against them.
Do you not know which organization was targeting the event?
There's quite a few, and I don't have all the exact details. And to tell you the truth, what really I think frightened the venues was the fact that the security was taking it so seriously. I can't answer that exactly right now either. All that I know is I can tell you that there was helicopters flying over our event venues before we got there. Well, that's how high level we were talking about. This is insane.
Yes, but the event hasn't happened yet. Now, my understanding was the first venue, it was an issue of cost that they said, look, we're concerned and you'll have to put A, B, C, and D in place. And these things had such a high price tag that no general NGO organization could have afforded them. So you moved to a church. The church then got scared because they said, well, these threats seem viable and we don't feel that we have enough security. And possibly they were also scared because if an event, something did happen, then people would be hesitant to return to the church. And this was a mega church from what I understand.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So now the event is not happening. We don't have full clarity from anyone. I spoke to some security officials in Texas as well. We can't seem to get the name of the organization that was putting up these viable threats. Yeah. But in the end of the day, I think you said it best in a discussion that we had last week, which was that you said that they basically shut you down twice because on the one hand, there was this violent threat. So there was a security threat, but the fear factor, as you said, the fact that people can't even have the event. It's not that something happened. God forbid somebody was murdered or somebody was harmed. But in fact, you never could get to that stage because the venue shut you down.
Yeah. Well, and the fact is that the only threats I'm aware of is that these groups were calling to attack the event. Now, if a group calls for an attack is very generic. What does that mean? Does that mean come out and protest out in the front? Whatever it is, but we know that that's not.
Or the FBI wouldn't be raising flags.
Right. We know that the threat was something of serious level, or the highest levels of security would not be acting the way that they were in our case. We saw what just happened in D.C. There's two precious Jews lost their lives due to this incredible high levels of threat. So this is not something that is not real. It's real. And when they call for attack, we know what it looks like now. It looks like shooting people in the streets, and it looks like throwing firebombs like what happened in Boulder. And I believe that the security was just really also frightened by the fact of, whoa, this underground swell, what I'm calling American jihad.
Right, and I want to check.
And this is something that I want people to understand. The reason why I'm calling it American jihad is because this is not a Middle Eastern thing. It's not it's in America. And there are Americans. Like, this is actually Americans that have taken on the ideology of the jihad that is literally threatening religious freedom, free speech in America.
So if you believe that there are American jihadists actually operating, how did they get there? How did this happen, first of all? And second of all, how did it happen in Texas? I mean, in this case, I have to say it's a conservative state. The governor is very supportive. The people are very supportive of Israel and of the Jews.
Yeah. I would say first off it's 100% there. We've realized it's there. There's no doubt about this. And I think the American people, we're a bit of a crisis right now. This jihad mentality doesn't value life. It doesn't value that. Israel's been facing this for its modern state and then all the way back into its biblical times as well. People have fought against, as soon as the Israelites come out of the land of Egypt, out of Egypt into Israel, they're getting attacked, right? These terrible attacks, even from biblical times. This has been historic. Jewish people have learned what that is, and they know how to fight it. Israel is one of the tops of fighting this. America's being taken off guard right now because they don't know what it means to fight someone that doesn't care whether they live or die. That's a challenge for Texans because Texans have a value for life. It's a Christian, Judaic Christian values that both Israel and America share. But we haven't fought this. What is this on our ground to have terrorists that have no care whether they die or not for the sake of their religion is something very, very frightening for Texans because we value life. We value our freedoms. And how do we fight such a thing like this that could care less whether life or death and throw their lives out there just to harm a public event? And it's a very challenging thing that we face.
You believe these are Muslim jihadists, or are these American, potentially atheists, former Christians, anti-Semites that are joining these movements? Because from what I see, even if you look at Boulder and you look at Washington that you mentioned, both of which are, striking and tragic examples of where I would say jihad-like attacks took place on American soil. Yeah. But they took place by either immigrants or not immigrants. They were illegal immigrants who were on the grounds who come from Muslim backgrounds. Yeah. These are not American citizens.
Sure. I would connect it to exactly what's happening on our campuses, though.
Okay.
I would think you have different tiers of this. Obviously, the money, the funding of this is coming from countries that are very anti-America. And that's very clear. Billions of dollars being put into these campuses, and that's already very clearly seen by everyone. And this is just another layer of it. And so, yes, the ones actually carrying out these brutal, insane attacks are people that probably have a little bit more of a deep-seated training in terrorism coming from these Arab countries that support terror. Now, the Americans that are joining this, unbelievably, these college students that are just so ignorant of what the reality is, they're being duped, and they're falling into being players in this scheme. And you can't hardly blame them. You got to blame the billions of dollars that have gone into their education to make them actually believe that this radical ideology is worth fighting for. And you see it. I mean, on TikTok, we have one pro-Israel view to 50 pro-Hamas views. And I'm not talking about pro-Arab or whatever. I'm talking about pro-Hamas. So if you're fighting an ideology that in America is being fueled and funded by the anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-West even machine, and our young people are falling prey to it. So to answer that question, I would say yes and yes. The radicalists are even becoming American.
Now, Josh, Christian Zionists don't tend to be the targets of anti-Semitism. When you talk about anti-Semitism, I mean, by definition, you're usually talking about anti-Semites or anti-Jewish activity. Yeah. Now, the two people you mentioned in Washington, D.C., they were not Christians. They were Messianic Jews. But this event was a Christian event. This wasn't a Jewish event. This wasn't the Federation. This wasn't AIPAC. Sure. So this was HaYovel. Yeah. So are Christian Zionists now the targets of anti-Semitism as well?
It reminds me of that quote from the time of the Holocaust where it says, I was this and they didn't come for me, and I was this one and they didn't come for me. You're familiar with this? It's like, and then there was no one left to protect me. You know that quote. And so I think of it very similarly. Christian Zionists have tied themselves to the fate of Israel in a way that the story ends, God forbid, as the Tim Boom family. There are those Christian Zionists that had the same fate of the Jews in the Holocaust. They said, no, this is not happening on our watch, and we will stand with Israel. It's our biblical mandate to stand with the people of Israel. When God says, I've chosen Israel, we, as a Christian Zionist, we just take that as fact. That's just the way it is. God has not forgotten his promises to Israel, and our fate is connected to that. We have no other way to turn. We are with Israel, and that never changes. So at the end of the day, these attacks are actually also targeting the Christian Zionist, and we're seeing that right now. I was attacked just like you would be attacked as a Jew because my stance is very clear. I stand with Israel, and that's becoming a reality. And I think that's also a massive wake-up call that's happening in America right now is that the Christian Zionists are like, whoa, can we not raise an Israeli flag outside of our church? Or now we're being threatened. Supposedly, and I haven't validated this, churches are being threatened. I know a church that hung an Israeli flag outside of their church right after the war, a massive Israeli flag outside of their church, and they've been seriously, hit for it. Wow. I mean, talking about like threats and these kind of things. That's what's facing America across the board.
It's craziness. I mean, I think about in Australia when it's called Addis Israel, the synagogue that was burnt down. Yeah. They were an ultra-Orthodox Jewish synagogue, but not anti-Israel, but not particularly pro-Israel in any capacity. But they targeted it. They said just because the name Israel was in the name of the synagogue, and that's what that sounds like. It's church, it's Christian, it's not Jewish, but you're pro-Israel. You hang up an Israeli flag, and now you're the target. But not every Christian is a Christian Zionist, or every evangelical is even pro-Israel. So why are some yes and some no?
It's a great question you're asking, especially for the Jewish world to understand. And I would, again, look back to the previous historical Christian relationship to Israel. What you saw in the 1930s and 40s was a very small group of Christians that actually fell in this category. Because at the end of the day, you can say what you want to say, but who's going to actually stand with their life on the line? Mm-hmm. And that defines a Christian Zionist. When it gets tough, when the battle gets going, those are the people whose faith is deeply connected to the Jewish people. They don't have a faith without the Jewish people. And in that sense, it comes from a much deeper place of their deep heart connection to God as the God of Israel and the Jewish people. And because of this, that's where that whole stance of and strength comes to stand with the Jewish people in these hard times. So yes, there's not. Unfortunately, I'd like to tell you that yes, all Christians are stand with Israel, but we know for a fact that that's not true, and historically, we know for a fact that that's not true. It's my job to get those numbers up, because I believe if you're a Christian out there in the world, you have a biblical mandate. Your Christian faith depends on it, so much so. If you say you're not a friend of Israel, I say, God help you. I'm not going to call you a Christian, because in my mind, those Christians that called themselves Christians in Nazi Germany didn't stand for Israel. I'm saying, okay, I don't believe you're actually. That's not a faith that I'm going to say actually is going to be called Christian, because I don't believe that's possible.
You have to tell me a little bit more about yourself and the organization HaYovel and who you are, because honestly, I don't know, if I was a Christian, wouldn't it just be easier to walk away?
Yeah, well, and that's unfortunately the stance that most of them took. But in the end, is that really the right thing to do? And of course, it's not the right thing to do. If we believe in God and we believe in the Bible, and we believe that God has chosen Israel to be his special people, to bring a light to the whole world, the best thing that we could possibly do is to support Israel and strengthen Israel, to be that light. Because look at this world. It's so dark. We need Israel now more than ever. And for us as the nations to come in understanding and to help elevate the people of Israel to their proper place of bringing God to the world is the biggest thing that we have to do right now.
So, look, under the Trump administration, we all believed that this was going to get better. Anti-Semitism didn't just start climbing on October 7th. Anti-Semitism in the United States has actually been climbing for the better part of the last decade. We saw in COVID, for example, huge spikes in anti-Semitism. At that time, everybody said, well, whenever there's a pandemic or something like a big crisis, we need a scapegoat. So we look to the Jews. Makes sense. COVID will go away. Jews will be fine. Kept going up. We saw a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism under the Biden administration. administration. October 7th obviously happened during the Biden administration, but now Trump has come into office. And there was a lot of talk in Israel and among the evangelical Christian community that put him back in the White House that this would die down. But nobody was shot in Washington, D.C. under the Biden administration. There was no firebomb attack in Colorado. How do you explain what is going on now?
It's really hard to explain, actually. And I would say that there's so much internal fighting going on in America right now, and that's pretty obvious, that this is becoming an issue that's highly concerning to me as a Christian Zionist, because I believe that the way, and this is just a foundational, fundamental principle of the Christian Zionist world, those that bless Israel will be blessed, and those that curse Israel will be cursed.
Genesis 12.
And that's Genesis 12. That's right. And this is a foundation that I believe that is not being supported enough by the Trump administration. Yes, Trump has been great for Israel, but there's some concerning things. What will happen? Why did Trump fly over Israel last round? What's going on in the deeper sense here? And what's going on with Saudi Arabia and Qatar? What's going on? Is Trump in the inner, deeper politics of America? Is he blessing Israel? And that's a concern.
You're concerned that Trump is not blessing Israel?
I'm concerned about what will happen down the road. What is in this planning right now? Because I'm not seeing blessing in America. And that's the wake-up call to me that something's off. Something's not right. If Jews are being shot in the streets of Washington, D.C., our capital, and firebombs are being thrown, and my event is being canceled in Texas, of all places, something is awry. And there's deep things to be concerned. I know there's people that are already raising flags of concern about different issues, specifically with Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Sure. But what's deeper behind the scenes, and I know for a fact that if this administration doesn't become behind Israel and just in a Genesis 12 blessing way, our country's going to see some really hard times.
Do you think that in Trump's first administration, he was more blessing Israel than he is today?
We raised a lot of concerns even about the first administration. Of course, the peace, with neighboring countries was amazing. The first playbook, though, was to try to create a Jewish state, kind of, but right in the mix of creating an Arab state as well. And we stood ferociously against that. Christian Zionists were probably one of the main reasons why that didn't happen.
Really?
Because we were so strongly, you cannot divide the land of Israel. You cannot create a 22nd Arab state in the heartland of Israel. We were trumpeting that from everywhere. But you can't cut the land of Israel.
I remember that differently because I remember interviewing Christian Zionists at the time who said every day we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and peace trumps the land. We already, as long as Jews right now are living on the lands, let's go with the peace and play this out.
I remember fighting with a couple guys pretty harshly on that one.
Yeah.
And there was some Christian Zionist voices that were okay with dividing the land.
Yeah.
And to me, that's never okay.
It's never okay.
And I will say again, because of our harsh stance about this, because we're unapologetically pro-Israel, we're pro-God's land for God's people, that's the reason why we're being the tip of the spear of an attack. There's other Jewish events that are happening. Not to say they're not getting pushback. They are getting pushback. But the amount of attack that we saw against our event is directly connected to our strong Israel connection.
You believe it's because you were bringing people, for example, from Judea and Samaria.
Of course.
Really going to fight for.
There's no doubt about that.
How did these jihadists, so to speak, know what the content of your event was? Was it so obvious just from the flyer?
Last year we reached about 20 million people on our Israel Guys platform.
Okay.
And because of that, and again, that's very conservative. That's so pro-Israel.
And just so our viewers know, Israel Guys is to explain it to everybody.
Sure. We started our Israel Guys advocacy for Israel about 3 years ago. Just boots on the ground advocacy, telling people the truth about what was happening in Israel. And, we've garnered, about 500,000 followers with that. And it's just been a huge, huge outreach. So that's why we're on the radar for the anti, and I don't want to even say just anti-Israel, because it's not. It's anti-American. It's anti-Western values. It's anti-Judaism. It's anti-Christian. These groups are fighting this, and we're at the centerpiece of representing all those values.
Now, Josh, some people might say you're being an alarmist. Okay, so an
Sure.
event was canceled, but do we really believe that we can make the jump from our event got canceled, there was some entity, we don't know who it was yet, but some entity or entities that were scaring the church, they canceled, And now we think we have jihadists attacking Christian Zionists on American soil. What do you respond to these people?
Sure. I'm far from an alarmist. Just the basic facts for me, and like I told you, we started this out with, I would never cancel to start with. That's not our background. That's not where we come from.
When October 7th happened, I remember you brought cowboys.
Yeah, of course. We all came running in. We've had Israeli training. It's just actually a fact. Israelis run into danger. They run into it. That's their training. They want to help, save. That's their whole goal. We've been trained with that same thing. We run into the fight. We face the dangers in order to bring truth, in order to save, right? That's what we're there for. And in Texas, the reality is this is not so much of an alarmist as it is just a wake-up call. It's just a wake-up call. Over the last few days, I've taken a deeper look at this. You're going to be absolutely shocked, and hopefully there's a few Texans listening. The Islamic takeover in Texas specifically, the targeted Islamic takeover in Texas is absolutely unreal. You're going to be baffled to see it. There's imams in Texas yelling to kill Jews from the podiums, to kill the Jews, the whole thing that the Muslims talk about all the time, behind the trees, and this tree's going to call out. You've heard this stuff. In Texas, they're yelling this stuff from on their Friday prayer services. How did that happen, and how is it just under, of course, the banner of free speech? This is very concerning to me, and it's not alarmist. It's a reality. This is what we face today. It's not just anti-Semitism. It's really broader, because technically anti-Semitism can't be against the Christians.
Right.
We're talking about a threat against the very foundations of what America was founded upon.
Which were Judeo-Christian values.
That's right.
Now, Josh, you have brought, I think, tens of thousands of Christians to Israel, specifically to what you call the biblical heartland, Judea and Samaria, to go and to plant, to harvest the grapes. And, it's a really unbelievable movement. It was started by your father, Tommy Waller.
That's right.
Talk to me a little bit about HaYovel and what you're doing there, and how has it had such success? Because, I don't know. I always hear, Christian Zionists, they're very pro-Israel, but they don't really know what the biblical heartland is. They don't even know where it is on the map. Sure.
Christian Zionists, we're educating, and that's our role. We started 21 years ago just by coming ourselves and understanding what was happening in the biblical heartland of Israel, as you said.
When you say coming ourselves, you and your family.
Yeah, that's right.
How many siblings remind you?
Yeah, so I have 10 brothers and sisters.
Unbelievable. Okay.
We're a big farming family from Middle Tennessee. We are just like many people that are watching, those people that are just really hardcore Zionists. They love Israel. They want to know what's happening in Israel. We were that. We had the big Israeli flag in our house and the menorah on our piano. We just loved Israel. Never knew a Jewish person. But because of our reading of the Bible, and because of we just felt connected to what was happening here, and we saw in the prophets that it said a very farming-like principles, like you're going to plant vineyards again on the mountains of Samaria. Foreigners are going to come be your plowmen and your vine dressers, like Isaiah and Jeremiah. They're talking about these very farming things. We said,
and you knew how to do that.
Yeah, that's what we do. And so we came to Israel. We got connected to the farms here, and it was just this huge, overwhelming response of yes, we need help. And so from that, it birthed the first Christian Zionist organization that was dedicated to serving the farmers of Judea and Samaria. And that's what we've been doing for 21 years now.
Amazing.
As you said, bringing thousands of volunteers to come and support that very thing. We never meant to be political, of course, in any sense. This is a very biblical thing for us. To see Jewish presence restored in Judea and Samaria, my goodness, can you get any better? Can you get, and the thing is, and I want everybody in the world to know this, we've been very successful. The Jewish people are back. They are building. And if you could, in this harsh time, it's good to understand this. Because even in the harshness of the war that we're facing here in Israel right now, Israel is back in its land. And they're even back in their ancestral homeland. They're back in Shiloh. You were just there this morning.
Yeah.
They're back in the Mount of Blessing, the Mount of Cursing, those places, those biblical, ancient Shechem, Hebron, Jerusalem. There's Jewish communities. 600,000 Jews now live there. Just 30, 40, at the 1967, there was 0 Jews in those areas. And Israel is back, and Israel is building. And if we were to say the prophets what they said, they would be Aliyah, they would be the return of the Jewish people. They would be the ancient ruins would be rebuilt again. And the agricultural cycles be coming back. And those 3 are happening on mass. So even in the harshness of everything we're talking about right now, there are also amazing, biblical, prophetic things that should excite every Christian Zionist on the planet.
And every Jew.
And every Jew.
So tell me, though, are you not afraid that, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but concerned that with the huge rise in anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, all across the world, not just the United States, that some of these blessings that you are describing could, God forbid, cause it to end? I mean, I just think back, history is cyclical. The Bible tells stories, right? And in the Bible, we have a first temple, we have a second temple. We start to rebuild, and unfortunately, we lose it all. How do we ensure that that doesn't happen with the pains that we're experiencing today?
You're talking about for Israel specifically.
Yeah.
Well, specifically for me, as I see Amos 9, we're talking about Bible prophecy here. Amos 9 says very clearly he's going to bring you back and you're never going to be pulled up again.
So this is it. We're here.
I can't imagine how not. This is after 2,000 years being pulled up out of your land. Israel came back in the most dramatic, unbelievable way. The return of the Jewish people, not only from one land of Egypt, but coming back from every little place, individuals brought back, just like as the Red Sea split for every single Jew that's coming back from all over the world. That's the moment we're witnessing, and it really pales the first Exodus and the whole scope of it, which is also what the prophet said. We're living in unbelievable days, and of course there's a battle against it. But it's my hope and prayer that every nation would understand the godliness of what's happening here and not fight against it as a jihad. By being silent, you're joining that force. What my call is for every person, every good person. You don't have to be a Christian Zionist. You just need to be a good person. You need to see the godliness of Israel and embrace this for what it is. The Jewish people represent good. They represent light in a very, very dark world. And we need more people to recognize that.
Amazing. Josh Waller, CEO of HaYovel, thank you so much for being here today.
It's been an honor. Thank you for having me.